Hi, Chris Cook from 3M Commercial Graphics here. Today we're going to talk about the amount of stretch that you put into vinyl when you're doing a car wrap. One of the most common reasons for vinyl lifting out of a recess or lifting off the paint of the vehicle is because it's been overstretched. A lot of people don't realise that there actually is a maximum stretch that you should put into the film, and for most cast vinyls that maximum stretch is 30%. So you shouldn't stretch the film by more than 30% of its original length. If you do, you put a lot of stress into it, you thin out the adhesive, the film's much more likely to lift off the surface. So we need to keep that stretch under 30%. But one of the problems is that film will actually stretch a lot more than 30%. You can push it way beyond that to 100%, 150%. But if you do that, it's almost guaranteed that the film's going to lift out of that recess. So one of the important things to do when you're starting off on a vehicle wrap is making sure that you're not going to exceed that 30% stretch mark on any part of the vehicle. So how can we do that? Can we actually measure how much stretch we're going to put into the film when we apply it down to this recess? We can, and it's actually very, very simple. So the tools that we need, fairly simple. A strip of paper. This is just plain photocopy paper. It's about 300mm long and about 30mm wide. It doesn't really matter too much exactly what size it is. Pen and a ruler. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the paper and put it on the surface of the vehicle, and what I'm trying to do is I suppose really replicate what I'm going to do with the vinyl. When I initially lay this vinyl, it's going to bridge across that recess. So I'm going to bridge the paper across it like that. Then with my pen, I'm going to make a mark where the beginning of the recess is and where the end of the recess is. So what I've done there is actually mark the amount of vinyl that I have to now push down into that recess. So what I'll do is I'm going to hold the top of that paper steady so it doesn't move. And again, replicating what I'm going to do with the vinyl when I apply it, I would work the vinyl down into that recess. So I'm going to push the paper down into that recess until it makes full contact with the surface. And now I'm going to mark the new location of the bottom of the recess. Okay, so the distance between these first two marks was the original length of the film that we had bridged across the recess. And then the distance between these two marks is how much we had to stretch it to actually push it down into that recess. So what we want to figure out is what percentage is that stretch of the original length of film that we had. This is where we use our ruler. So what I'm going to do is actually measure the distance of original film that we had, and that's about 16mm or so, and then measure the amount of stretch that we put into the film, and that's about 4mm. So we had 16mm of film and we've stretched it by 4. So 4 over 16, that's 25%, which is under our 30% limit. So this particular recess is 25% stretch, which is within the limits of 30% for our cast vinyl. So that recess is okay. One of the important reasons for doing this test is a lot of recesses can be very deceiving, because the percentage stretch that you put into the film doesn't just depend on how deep the recess is, but also depends on how wide it is. It's a ratio between those two things that determines the stretch. So a recess that is not very deep, but it's also quite narrow, can actually have quite a high percentage stretch. And that's actually what the case we've got here. The recess in this vehicle doesn't look very deep, it doesn't look very intimidating, but it's 25%, it's towards the upper end of the acceptable level of stretch. So if you are doing vehicle wraps, whether they be cars or vans, really important step is to make sure you measure that stretch to ensure you're not going to exceed that 25% maximum recommended stretch for most cast vinyls.